When I stayed late to finish a huge project, my coworker snickered, "Must be nice to have nothing better going on in life." I smiled tight and said nothing. A month later, I got a personal recommendation to join a prestigious program he had applied for and been rejected from. Watching his forced congratulations was almost better than the promotion itself. I don't usually post stuff like this, but I've been sitting on it for a while, and I think I need to let it out. Maybe someone else out there will understand. So, I work at a mid-sized architecture firm in Pittsburgh. Nothing fancy. Not some big NYC operation with rooftop bars and nap pods. Just an old office building with flickering lights and a printer that jams every time someone breathes near it. But the job's good, and I like the kind of work we do: historic renovations, public spaces, that kind of thing. Anyway, about a year ago, we got a huge project. Redesigning the old Parnell building downtown. It's one of those places that's been around since the 1920s, full of character but falling apart. The city wanted to keep the look but bring it up to code and make it usable. It was a big deal. My firm was excited. So was I. At first, it was supposed to be a 4-person team. But then everything started falling apart. One guy got the flu and was out for weeks. Another transferred to another department. Suddenly, it was just me and Greg. Now, let me tell you about Greg. He's that guy at work. You know, the one. He talks like he's always in a job interview. Loud voice, expensive watch, always standing in the boss's doorway acting like he's just dropping by. He's the type who brags about being handpicked for meetings and makes sure you know how many hours he's crushing at the gym. He's not terrible at his job, I'll admit that, but most of his success comes from knowing how to be seen. And Greg thought he should have led the Parnell project. He didn't say it outright, but it was obvious. The little digs. The fake helpful suggestions that were really just criticism in disguise. But I didn't bite. I just focused. I took the lead, not because I'm some genius, but because I showed up and did the damn work. And there was a lot of it. Late nights, early mornings. I missed dinners, birthdays, weekends. I had this old office chair that made my back scream, but I didn't have time to deal with it. I kept going because I wanted the project to be solid. I wanted it to reflect the kind of work I believed in. No shortcuts. No fluff. One night, it was maybe a Tuesday, I stayed late again. Everyone had gone home. I was cleaning up the renderings for a client presentation, trying to fix a lighting issue that had been bugging me for days. That's when Greg walked by. He had his gym bag slung over his shoulder and was eating something from a smoothie cup. He paused, leaned on the side of my cubicle, and gave me this half smirk. Then he said it. "Must be nice to have nothing better going on in life." And then he laughed. Just a short, sharp breath through his nose like he was amused with himself. I looked up at him. He didn't even wait for me to respond. He just kept walking, that smug little grin still on his face. I didn't say a word. But it stuck. Not just what he said, but how he said it. Like staying late meant I had no life. Like giving a damn made me pathetic. Like I was beneath him because I wasn't out there networking or tagging my way through happy hours. I didn't tell anyone about that moment. I just kept my head down. The project finished strong. The client was thrilled. Our lead architect, Claire, gave me a nod and said, "Nice work." Really? That meant something to me. Then, about a month later, I got called into Claire's office. Thought maybe something was wrong. She's not the type to just shoot the breeze. But she didn't look mad. She handed me a packet. I looked at it. It was a letter from the National Preservation Design Program, an elite architecture fellowship. They only accept 10 people per year, from across the country. Fully funded. Prestige, connections, everything. Then I saw the note, "Congratulations. You've been accepted." I was floored. I hadn't even applied. Claire saw the look on my face and said, I nominated you. Wrote the letter myself. You've earned it. I didn't even know what to say. She told me the program reached out and asked if she knew anyone who fit their criteria. She thought of me. Said she'd been watching the work I did on Parnell, especially when things got hard. Then she said something I'll never forget, you don't talk a lot. But your work does. And it says the right things. What hit me later, and hit hard, was this: Greg had applied to that same program 3 times. He talked about it constantly. This year's the year, he'd say. Once I'm in, the doors that'll open. He even once tried to show me his essay draft and humble brag about how tight it was. When the company newsletter came out announcing my acceptance, I was in the kitchen grabbing coffee. Greg walked in right behind me. I heard his footsteps stop. Then I heard him exhale. Slow. He came over, real stiff-like, and said, Hey. Saw the news. Congrats, man. His eyes didn't match his smile. His voice cracked just a bit. I just looked him in the eye and said, Thanks. That's it. But in that moment, I didn't need to say more. And he knew it. I thought that would be the end of it. I'd gotten into the program. Greg had to eat his pride. I figured we'd both move on. But I was wrong. See, Greg didn't take it quietly. Not really. He stopped making little comments. He stopped saying much at all, actually. Just gave me short nods in meetings, fake smiles in the hallway, and always looked away too quick. I didn't care. I was already preparing to leave for the program in a few weeks. But then weird stuff started happening at work. First, I noticed some of my shared files had been edited, tiny changes that made things look sloppy or incomplete. I'm talking naming conventions messed up, layers flattened in CAD files that weren't supposed to be, stuff that made me look careless. At first I thought I was just tired, maybe I made the mistakes myself. Then one of the junior architects, Mallory, pulled me aside. Hey, she said, I don't know if this is weird, but Greg asked me for copies of the Parnell drafts last week. Said he needed them for a portfolio review. But the way he asked felt off. I asked if she gave them to him. She looked guilty. Yeah. I didn't think anything of it. But now, I dunno. He hasn't even been working on Parnell. That's when my gut twisted. I started checking internal logs. Who accessed what, when? It took a few days, but I found it. Greg had downloaded 3 sets of my design files, then uploaded versions to his own folder. Slightly altered. Stripped of watermarks. He was trying to pass my work off as his own. I didn't report him right away. Instead, I started gathering proof. Quietly. I screenshotted everything, timestamps, file paths, even his edits. I backed it all up on an external drive I kept in my desk drawer. I didn't want to make a move unless I knew I had him cornered. But Greg must have sensed something. Maybe Mallory said something, or maybe he just noticed I stopped reacting the same way. Either way, he started poking again, harder this time. One morning, I walked into a meeting and saw he had printed my design boards, the original Parnell mock-ups, and pinned them to the wall. No credit. Just said, let's revisit my old concepts, see what we can borrow. My heart was pounding in my ears. I didn't say anything in the room. But afterward, I followed him into the break room. You really want to do this? I said, calm, but not soft. He leaned against the counter like he was relaxing at a beach bar. I'm not doing anything. You're just paranoid, he said. Besides, in this industry, ideas float. Hard to prove who started what. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just pettiness. Greg wanted to ruin me before I left for the program. Maybe he thought if he could damage my rep or stir up enough confusion, I'd lose the opportunity. Or maybe he just couldn't stand the thought of me getting something he couldn't. A few days later, Claire called me into her office again. She looked tired. She said someone anonymously submitted a concern about my work, said I had misrepresented authorship on the Parnell project. That I'd used someone else's drafts and claimed them as my own. I knew immediately who it was. Greg was trying to flip the script. But here's the thing, I was ready. I didn't just pull out a defense. I pulled out a binder. I had screenshots, logs, version histories. I even had video recordings from screen shares during the original design phase, with my voice walking through the steps. I laid it all out. Claire went quiet. She looked over everything for about 10 minutes. Then she leaned back in her chair. I believe you, she said. But this goes deeper than you. I blinked. What do you mean? She rubbed her temples. Greg's been doing this kind of thing for years. You're just the first person who bothered to track it. Turns out, Greg had a long history of skating the edge, taking credit where he shouldn't, twisting his role in group projects, even pressuring junior staff into silence. But no one had nailed him down. Until now. Claire told me she'd be elevating it to HR quietly, but officially. I didn't say much. But as I walked out of her office, I felt something in my chest I hadn't felt in a while. Control. I thought maybe that would be it. That Greg would back off now that Claire was involved. That maybe, for once, doing things the right way would actually work out without more damage. But I underestimated how far Greg was willing to go. A week after the HR report, I got an email from the program coordinator of the National Preservation Design Program. It was polite, too polite. Said they'd received some troubling anonymous concerns about my qualifications and potential authorship discrepancies. They weren't removing my acceptance yet, but they were reviewing the matter. My stomach dropped. Greg hadn't just tried to mess with my job. He went after the one thing I had worked toward for months. Maybe years. I sat there staring at the screen, not even blinking. He really submitted something to them. I had no proof, of course, it was anonymous, but who else could it have been? Who else even had that much of a grudge? And the worst part? He used just enough of the truth, the project, the timing, the team changes, to make his lies sound real. I emailed Claire immediately and told her what happened. She didn't hesitate. She forwarded an official letter from the company, signed by 2 partners, confirming my sole authorship and performance on the project. She even called the program director herself. Told me later she used her full voice on that call. But still, the damage was done. A seed of doubt was planted. The kind of seed that sticks, no matter how much you water it with facts. I tried to keep my head down at work. Every time I passed Greg, he looked smug again. Like he knew he couldn't win outright, so he was trying to drag me through the mud on my way out. The thing about people like Greg, they don't know how to stop. They always think they're the smartest in the room. They think no one sees them for what they really are. But I was done playing defense. If he wanted a war, I was ready to show him what it looked like. So I started digging. Not just into his recent mess-ups, but everything. I talked to Mallory again. Then I reached out to Jacob, one of the architects who had transferred out of our team last year. Then I found Natalie. She had left the company entirely after working under Greg on a government renovation contract. What she told me made my skin crawl. Turns out, Greg had pressured her into approving a design draft that violated building code, then pinned the mistake on her when the city flagged it. She got written up, and she didn't have the proof to fight it. But now, she was willing to talk. She even still had emails. And a voicemail. One where Greg told her, "Just push it through, Nat. It'll be fine, and if it's not, no one's gonna come after me." I asked her if she'd be willing to share it with HR. She said yes. I packaged everything, Greg's pattern of behavior, the stolen files, the fake accusations, the voicemail, and sent it all to Claire and the HR head. No drama. No speeches. Just the truth. Claire called me that night. Her voice was tight. You're not the first person he tried to burn, she said. But you might be the last. 2 days later, Greg didn't show up to work. No email. No calls. Just, gone. By the end of the week, we got the company-wide email. Gregory M. is no longer employed at this firm. We wish him the best in future endeavors. People whispered. People guessed. But I didn't say a thing. A few days later, the program director from the fellowship called me personally. Said everything had been cleared. They appreciated the documents my firm sent. Said they were sorry for the confusion. I was still in. But here's the twist I didn't expect. They also said that whoever submitted the anonymous complaint had tried to use fake credentials to back up their story. Falsified job titles. A phony business email. They traced the IP. It came from our office. They didn't say Greg's name. They didn't have to. After Greg vanished from the firm, things calmed down. For a minute. The HR investigation quietly closed. No one ever said exactly what happened, but people talked. You know how offices are. I didn't have to say anything. In fact, I never did. I just showed up, did my job, and waited for my departure date to the fellowship program. But karma? It wasn't done with Greg yet. About 2 months into the fellowship, I was deep into our design challenge. Working with other architects from around the country, pulling 14-hour days, learning from top mentors. It was the kind of experience that changes your career. Every few days, I'd think about where I'd be if I hadn't said yes to that extra work on the Parnell project. Or if I'd let Greg get in my head. Then one day, during a group lunch, one of the guest architects, Jennifer, from a respected DC firm, brought up a funny story. So this guy applied to our office recently, she said. Had all these fake recommendations. Even listed work on the Parnell building in Pittsburgh like he was the lead. But we checked the firm contact, and they straight up told us he got fired for falsifying credentials. Can you believe that? I froze with my fork in midair. I asked her, real casual, what was the guy's name? She said, Greg something. Milner, maybe? Kind of a Weasel Y vibe? I laughed. I actually laughed out loud. That was the moment I knew it wasn't over for him. Every application he sent, every resume he padded, every fake title he gave himself, it was all catching up. Word was getting around. Quietly. Behind his back. In calls, in emails, in background checks. Professionally, Greg was radioactive. He tried to get a job in Chicago, rejected. Tried freelancing, clients ghosted him. One of our own clients from the Parnell project called me to confirm he wasn't part of the original design team, because Greg had approached him privately asking for work. I told the truth. After a few months, I stopped hearing about him. But one day, late at night, I got a LinkedIn message from a random burner account. No picture. Just a few words, hope you're enjoying what you stole. No name. But I didn't need one. I didn't reply. Fast forward to last month. I finished the fellowship. Got a full-time offer from a firm in Seattle, huge firm, major projects, strong ethics. They'd heard about the Parnell building and asked me to lead a new adaptive reuse project in an old shipping district. Same concept, bigger scale. But before I left Pittsburgh for good, I made one stop. Claire invited me to lunch. She told me, over coffee and soup, that the firm had done a full internal sweep after the Greg fallout. They found small things he'd tampered with, billing logs, internal memos, backdated meeting notes. Enough to prove a pattern. Then she paused and looked at me closely. There's one more thing I wanted to tell you. Turns out, the program didn't just clear my name. They blacklisted Greg. Not officially, not on paper, but quietly. The director called a few other programs. Word spread. A few of Greg's old contacts dropped him. He'd burned too many bridges. All the ego, all the lying, people remembered. And they talked. And the biggest twist? Greg had tried to file a complaint against the company. Claimed wrongful termination, said I set him up, tried to drag Claire into it. But remember that external hard drive I kept? The one with all the files, screenshots, and video logs? Yeah. That thing saved everyone. Claire sent it to legal. Their lawyers buried him. The case never even made it past early review. Greg lost his shot at revenge. For good. And me? I didn't just survive. I leveled up. I left Pittsburgh on my own terms. The firm threw me a going-away lunch. Mallory got promoted. Claire gave a small speech, nothing flashy. Just said, some people talk. Some people build. And some people do both when they have to. She handed me a print of the final Parnell rendering. Framed. Signed by the team. I hung it up in my new office in Seattle. Sometimes, when I look at it, I still remember that one night. Me alone at my desk. Greg standing behind me, smirking. Must be nice to have nothing better going on in life. Yeah. It is nice.